The night I left my wife, I was sure I was the one being betrayed. Now, almost a year later, I know I was the idiot holding the knife, cutting my own life in half with both hands. I'm a 35-year-old man from Indiana. I install commercial HVAC systems for schools, office buildings, warehouses, places nobody notices unless the air stops working. My life used to be painfully normal in the best way. Same coffee every morning. Same commute. Same woman in the kitchen, standing at the counter in my old college t-shirt, tying her hair up with one hand while scrambling eggs with the other. Her name is Lauren. We were married for 6 years. Together for almost 9. I used to think that made us unbreakable. That's the embarrassing part. Nothing dramatic happened at first. No screaming matches. No plates thrown. No lipstick on collars. No neighbor calling the cops. If you had looked at us from the outside, you would have seen a decent, tired American couple in our 30s trying to keep up with bills, work, and the kind of quiet disappointment that settles in when life turns out more expensive and less magical than you expected. We bought a small house 3 years into the marriage. Gray siding, cracked driveway, one maple tree out front that dropped leaves straight into the gutters like it had a grudge. We talked about kids. We talked about moving closer to Chicago someday. We talked about renovations we couldn't afford. We talked the way married people do when they still believe they have endless time. Then the distance started. It was subtle enough that I could explain it away. Lauren was on her phone more. She started taking calls outside. She began saying she had errands after work that somehow always ran late. She changed her passcode. She stopped leaving her laptop open on the dining room table. She got quieter in bed. Not cold exactly. Just somewhere else. I noticed all of it. I also told myself I was crazy for noticing. That's the kind of man I am, for better or worse. I can tolerate a lot as long as I can explain it. Stress, overwork, grief, silence. Give me a reason and I can live inside almost anything. What I can't handle is ambiguity. My father cheated on my mother for most of my childhood. Not one affair. A whole parallel life of lies and disappearances and late meetings and weird receipts in his truck. My mom became a detective because she had to. And I became the kid who learned that love doesn't usually explode. It erodes. Lauren knew all that. Which is why what happened next felt almost surgical. One Thursday, I came home and found a plain white envelope shoved under the front door. No stamp. No name. Just our address written in block letters. Inside were 3 things. A printed screenshot of text messages between Lauren and someone saved as B. A hotel receipt from downtown. And 2 photos of her getting into a silver SUV with a man I didn't recognize. I remember every stupid detail. The cheap paper. The slightly faded ink. The way my fingers felt numb before my brain caught up. The messages were bad. Not explicit, but close enough. Private enough. Familiar enough to make my stomach drop. Talk about missing someone. Talk about last night. Talk about how she couldn't keep doing this much longer. There was a date on the hotel receipt from 2 weeks earlier. On a Wednesday night she told me she was helping a coworker finish quarterly reports. I stood in the kitchen with those papers in my hand until the refrigerator started making that loud clicking sound it does when the ice maker jams. Lauren came home 20 minutes later. She took one look at my face and knew. That part still haunts me. She didn't look confused. She didn't even look guilty at first. She looked tired. Like something she had been bracing for had finally arrived. I put the papers on the table between us. She didn't touch them. I asked one question. Just one. Who is he? Her eyes moved to the receipt, then the photos, then back to me. I saw 100 things pass over her face in about 2 seconds. Shock. Anger. Fear. Then something else I didn't have a name for back then. She asked where I got them. I said that wasn't the point. She said it absolutely was the point. That made me angrier, because to me it sounded like a guilty person trying to regain control of the conversation. I remember laughing, and it didn't sound like me. I asked her if she wanted to explain the hotel first or the messages first. Lauren sat down very slowly. Then she said the sentence that detonated the whole marriage. She said, "I can explain this, but you need to give me until tomorrow." Tomorrow. Not now. Not immediately. Tomorrow. I think something broke in me right there. Because if my wife had put evidence of cheating in front of me, I would have been talking before she finished setting the papers down. I would have emptied my pockets, my phone, my email, my whole damn life onto the table. But Lauren wanted time. One night. Just enough space for a lie to be polished. That's what I told myself. I asked her if she loved him. She said I was asking the wrong question. I asked if she had slept with him. She stood up then, and for the first time there was real anger in her voice. She said I needed to stop and listen. She said I was about to do something I couldn't undo. She said if I trusted her at all, I would wait until morning. That word, trust, coming from her, with those papers sitting on the table, made me see red. I packed a duffel bag in under 10 minutes. She didn't try to physically stop me. She followed me from room to room, not crying, not pleading, just telling me to slow down. That somehow made it worse. I wanted a confession or denial, something clean. What I got was restraint. A person refusing to panic while I was falling apart. At the front door, she said one more thing. She said, if you walk out tonight, you're not walking out because of what I did. You're walking out because you decided not to hear me. That line stayed in my head for months, mostly because I hated it. I drove to my friend Colin's apartment and slept on his couch. Or tried to. Around 2 in the morning, I looked at the screenshots again. There was one message near the bottom I hadn't fully noticed before. It was from Lauren. It said, he can't know yet. If this blows up too early, it ruins everything. I remember staring at those words in the dark, feeling like my insides had turned to ice. At 6:30 the next morning, before Lauren could explain, I texted her 3 words. I want out. She replied almost immediately. Not with a denial. Not with begging. Not with rage. Just this. Then check the blue file box in the hall closet before you make this permanent. I didn't go back. And that was the first mistake that destroyed my life. People love to imagine divorce as one huge moment. It isn't. It's paperwork. Forwarded emails. Password changes. Toothbrushes in plastic grocery bags. Deciding who keeps the Costco membership like that means anything. It's watching your whole life get converted into a list of assets and obligations by people billing in 6-minute increments. For the first month, I lived like I was underwater. I worked. I came back to Colin's place. I drank more than I should have. I told the same edited version of the story to anyone who asked. My wife got caught. My marriage was over. I was dealing with it. Everybody nodded the way people do when they don't know what to say but still want to feel useful. Colin was my closest friend. I'd known him since I was 26. We met on a job site in Lafayette when he was working electrical subcontracting and I was still doing residential installs. He had that easy confidence some guys have, the kind that makes them seem more competent than they actually are. Funny, social, always ready with a couch, a beer, a ride, an opinion. Mostly opinions. He hated Lauren long before all this. Not openly. Not enough that I ever treated it as a red flag. He did it in that subtle, guy-friendly way where every criticism sounds like concern. She was too private. Too serious. Too controlling with money. Too buttoned up. He used to say she looked at the world like she was auditing it. Back then I thought he was just being Colin. After I left, he became the loudest voice in my ear. He told me not to go back for some dramatic closure talk. He told me women who got caught always wanted one last conversation so they could rewrite the story. He told me if I gave Lauren an opening, I'd end up apologizing for my own humiliation. The worst part is that he said exactly what I wanted to hear. Lauren sent me 2 emails the first week. Both were short. Both asked me to come to the house and talk in person before lawyers got involved. Both mentioned the blue file box in the closet. I didn't respond. I told myself it was because I had boundaries. Really it was because I was scared there was still some version of events that might make me hesitate, and at that point anger was the only thing holding me upright. The divorce moved faster than it should have for a 6-year marriage. No kids. No giant shared investments beyond the house and savings. She didn't contest much. That made me even more self-righteous. In my head, her not fighting was proof. Guilty people liked clean exits. A month in, I had to go back to the house while Lauren was at work to collect the rest of my things. I still remember how normal it looked. My boots were still by the laundry room door. Her mug was still in the dish rack. The blanket her mother gave us for Christmas was folded over the couch like it had every right to still be there. The house didn't look like a crime scene. It looked like my home, which somehow felt more insulting. I found the blue file box exactly where she said it would be, on the top shelf in the hall closet behind old board games and a broken vacuum attachment. I stared at it for maybe 30 seconds. Then I left it there. I wish I had a better explanation than pride. I took my clothes, some tools, my vinyl records, and the framed photo of my grandfather from the mantel. That was it. As I was leaving, I noticed something on the dining table. My wedding ring. I had left mine on Colin's bathroom counter the first night and never put it back on. Lauren had taken hers off too and set it there beside a folded note with my name on it. I didn't read the note. I threw both rings in the center console of my truck and drove away with my jaw clenched so hard my head hurt. The official divorce wasn't final until 5 months later, but the marriage was dead long before that. By then I had a 1-bedroom apartment over a dentist's office, a mattress on a metal frame, and a refrigerator containing beer, mustard, and half a rotisserie chicken I kept forgetting to throw out. That line from the title of this whole mess, "I don't know how to live anymore," sounds dramatic until it happens to you. Because it wasn't that I wanted Lauren back, not exactly. It was that all the tiny mechanics of my life had been built around us. She paid the utilities. I handled the yard. She remembered birthdays. I fixed anything with a motor. She liked the left side of the bed. I always forgot to buy toothpaste until she reminded me. The whole structure collapses in weird places first. You don't miss the big anniversary moments at the beginning. You miss somebody knowing how you take your coffee without asking. I started having panic attacks in grocery stores. No joke. I'd stand in the cereal aisle trying to decide between brands and suddenly feel like the floor had tilted. Too many options. Too much silence. Too much proof that no one was coming home but me. Then work started getting weird. I had moved up over the years and was supervising larger contracts by then, which meant signing off on invoices, equipment orders, vendor approvals. Boring adult stuff. One Thursday, accounting called me asking about 3 purchases under my authorization code from a supplier I had never heard of. Not huge amounts individually, but enough to matter. I assumed it was an internal mistake. Then another one showed up. Then 2 more. All to the same vendor. I checked the system. My credentials had approved them. Same timestamp patterns too, usually late evening or early morning, times I wasn't even logged in. I changed my password and flagged it. Colin brushed it off when I mentioned it. Said every company had sloppy accounting. Said if someone was skimming, it was probably some bored office guy buying boat parts with the company card. Then he asked something that felt off even at the time. He asked whether Lauren ever had access to my work laptop or login information back when we were still together. I said maybe once or twice for harmless things, printing forms, helping me organize receipts. He whistled low and said, "Man, that's the kind of stuff people use in divorces." That got in my head immediately. A week later, one of my supervisors pulled me into a conference room and asked if there was anything personal going on that might explain irregular financial activity. I felt my face go hot. I asked if they were accusing me of something. He said no. Not yet. But the phrasing was bad enough on its own. On the drive home, for the first time in months, I seriously considered that Lauren might not have just cheated on me. She might have been setting me up too. I sat in my truck outside my apartment for almost an hour, going back through every weird thing from the last 6 months. Her secrecy. The locked laptop. The late calls. The mysterious errands. The blue file box. The message about me not knowing yet because it would ruin everything. A version of the story started taking shape in my head, and it was ugly. Maybe there had never been just an affair. Maybe there was money involved. Maybe the guy in the photos wasn't a lover. Maybe he was a lawyer. That night, for the first time since I left, I searched Lauren's name online. What came up was mostly normal. Her LinkedIn. Her work profile. Old marathon results. And then one result from the county court website. It was a case filing from 3 months before I left. Not a divorce case. A petition related to financial records. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might throw up right there at the kitchen counter. The petitioner's name wasn't Lauren. It was mine. And attached to it, listed as an interested party, was a vendor name I had just spent the last week hearing about at work. That's when I realized one of 2 things had to be true. Either Lauren had betrayed me in a way I hadn't even begun to understand. Or she had been trying to tell me the truth the entire time. And I had just handed whoever was real. I didn't sleep that night. I kept refreshing the county case page like it was going to suddenly explain itself. It didn't. Public records give you enough information to panic and not enough to calm down. There were dates, filings, legal language, references to subpoenas and account freezes, but nothing a normal person could actually interpret at 2 in the morning in gym shorts, standing barefoot on cold tile. By sunrise, I had done something I swore I wouldn't do. I called Lauren. It went straight to voicemail. I hung up without leaving one. 10 minutes later, she texted. "I wondered when you'd finally look." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I asked if we could meet. She sent one address and one time. Noon. Coffee shop in Carmel. No extra words. When I got there, she was already sitting outside with a paper cup in front of her and a manila folder on the table. She looked thinner than I remembered. Sharper somehow. Not fragile. Just worn down in a way that made me instantly ashamed of how easily I had imagined she'd been living some glamorous double life while I suffered. She didn't hug me. Didn't smile either. I sat down and the first thing I said was, "Were you stealing from me?" Not the best opening of my life. Lauren closed her eyes for 1 second like she was physically resisting the urge to stand up and leave. Then she slid the manila folder toward me. Inside were printouts. Bank transfers. Vendor invoices. Email headers. Copies of internal approvals from my company. A timeline she had typed out herself. I read the first page twice before the name sank in. The fake vendor account that had been draining money from my company for months had a mailing address linked to a Shell LLC. That LLC traced back to Colin. Not directly, of course. It went through another name first, then a relative, then a rented mailbox. But it led to him. I thought I was misunderstanding it. I looked up and asked how she got this. Lauren took a breath and finally told me everything. About 8 months before I left, she had found a credit card statement with a charge that didn't make sense from one of our shared accounts. Small amount. Business classified. She assumed it was mine and asked about it casually. I said I knew nothing about it, which was true. So she started looking, first because she thought maybe someone had stolen my card, then because she noticed a pattern. Tiny charges. Vendor names that sounded real but weren't. Refunds into accounts she didn't recognize. Then larger transfers hidden inside legitimate project billing. At first she believed I was being careless. Then she thought maybe I was doing something stupid and illegal without understanding the consequences. Then she realized someone else was using me. She didn't come to me immediately because she was scared of two things. First, that if I confronted the wrong person too early, the evidence would disappear. Second, that if Colin was involved, and by then she strongly suspected him, I wouldn't believe her without proof. That second part hit harder than I want to admit. Because she was right. I wouldn't have believed her. Not back then. She hired a forensic accountant through a friend of her boss. That was the man in the hotel photos. Not a lover. A consultant who didn't want meetings at his office because he was handling another fraud case involving one of his employees. They met in hotel conference spaces because they were anonymous and easy to book last minute. The texts? Altered. The printed screenshots I got in the envelope were fake, built from real fragments pulled out of context from messages between Lauren and the consultant. Last night, referred to a late meeting. I can't keep doing this much longer, referred to the stress of sitting on the evidence while they built the case. He can't know yet, meant me. Because if I knew too soon, I'd go straight to Colin. Which, again, she was right about. I felt sick. I asked about the blue file box. Lauren laughed then. Not because anything was funny. It was the sound a person makes when reality becomes unbearable. She said the blue file box contained everything. Printed records. A flash drive backup. Copies of emails. Notes about the shell companies. A handwritten letter to me explaining why she had kept it quiet and what she needed me to do next. I never opened it. She had spent weeks building a trap for the man stealing through my credentials and months trying to protect me from criminal exposure. And I had looked at one planted envelope and decided I knew the whole story. I asked why she didn't just say all this that night. She stared at me for so long I couldn't hold eye contact. Then she said she tried. Not with all the details, because the consultant had warned her that if the wrong person learned there was an investigation, records could vanish and the blame could be shifted onto me before they could untangle it. But she had tried to get me to wait 12 hours. Just long enough for a scheduled meeting the next morning with an attorney and an internal compliance contact from my company. Instead I bolted. And once I filed for divorce, Colin got exactly what he needed. Chaos. My separation from Lauren made me look unstable. It cut me off from the one person who had the documentation. It made her appear vindictive if she came forward publicly too soon. And while we were tearing our marriage apart, Colin had more time to clean house. But he hadn't been fast enough. The county petition I found? That had been Lauren, through counsel, trying to freeze records tied to the shell vendor before they disappeared entirely. She filed it under my interest because the money trail touched my work accounts and personal exposure. I asked the obvious question then. Why? Why would Colin do this to me? Lauren didn't answer immediately. Instead she pulled out one last paper from the folder. It was a copy of an email I had never seen, sent from Colin to Lauren 2 weeks before I got the envelope. Reading it felt like getting hit in the face. It wasn't a confession. He wasn't that stupid. But it was enough. He told her she was getting too deep into things that didn't concern her. He told her I was more useful, clear-headed and alone. He told her she had always underestimated how easy it was to make a suspicious man run. Then came the line I haven't forgotten. He wrote, "Once he's out of the way, the rest becomes paperwork." I looked up at Lauren and for the first time since our marriage ended, I didn't just feel guilty. I felt terror. Because that line meant this was never only about money. Colin hadn't just wanted to steal from my company. He had wanted me isolated. And Lauren, very calmly, told me the worst part. He had also been sleeping with my sister-in-law for nearly a year. Which would have been disgusting enough on its own. Except my sister-in-law worked in records management at my company's regional office. And suddenly every missing file, every odd approval, every convenient delay in the audit made horrifying sense. I remember putting the papers down because my hands were shaking too hard to hold them. Then Lauren said there was one more thing I needed to know. And when she told me, I finally understood why she looked so tired that first night in our kitchen. Because by the time I walked out on my marriage, she had already figured out that I was the one being framed to take the fall. There are moments in life when you can actually feel your self-image tearing. That coffee shop was one of them. For months, I had built an identity around being the wronged husband. The betrayed one. The guy everyone pitied a little and admired a little because he had enough self-respect to walk away. It turned out I wasn't brave. I was convenient. Everything after that moved fast in the ugliest possible way. Lauren's attorney connected me with the forensic accountant and, eventually, with outside counsel my company retained once the fraud exposure became impossible to ignore. I spent 2 straight days in conference rooms looking at spreadsheets, transaction maps, login histories, invoice chains, and security footage timelines. The more I saw, the worse it got. Colin had been siphoning money for over a year through fake vendors inserted into legitimate projects. Nothing cartoonish. He kept the amount small enough to blend into overages and subcontract discrepancies. My credentials had been used because I approved enough fieldwork to make it plausible. Some access came from old shared passwords. Some from cloned login sessions when I left my laptop unsecured on sites. A few records had been altered or delayed internally by my sister-in-law, Valerie, who managed regional document routing and had enough access to bury inconsistencies for weeks at a time. If that sounds insane, I thought so too. It was also real. Once outside auditors got into the raw logs, the pattern hardened quickly. Repeated access points near Colin's projects. Metadata mismatches. Approval chains that hit my credentials while my phone location placed me somewhere else entirely. Vendor communications routed through masked accounts tied to prepaid devices. The anonymous envelope that ended my marriage had been the panic move. Lauren getting close had spooked him. And he knew exactly where to press because he knew me better than almost anyone. He knew my history with my father. Knew what kind of evidence would bypass reason and go straight to old injury. Knew I'd rather walk away wounded than stand still long enough to risk being made a fool. That knowledge still makes me feel sick. The affair with Valerie was easy to prove once people started looking. Hotel bookings. Burner accounts. Deleted messages recovered from backups. She rolled on him almost immediately when legal pressure hit. Apparently loyalty gets thin when felony charges enter the chat. Colin lasted longer. Not because he was smarter. Because he was arrogant. He kept trying to sell every new piece of evidence as coincidence, clerical overlap, business misunderstandings. He even tried to imply Lauren had manipulated the records because she was obsessive and angry about the divorce. That argument died the second recovered email archives showed he had been monitoring my separation in real time and pushing mutual friends to keep me away from her. One of those mutual friends sent investigators screenshots of Colin bragging that I was too proud to ever circle back. That one almost made me laugh. Almost. Work put me on administrative leave during the investigation, which was humiliating but fair. I couldn't even complain. My name was on enough poison paperwork that they had to clear it properly. Every morning I woke up with the same dull, grinding feeling in my chest. Not panic anymore. Something worse. The knowledge that the person I should have trusted most had been standing in front of me asking for 12 hours, and I had chosen a man who liked hearing himself talk over my own wife. Ex-wife. That word did not get easier. I tried apologizing to Lauren early, before the case broke open. It was terrible. I met her outside her attorney's office because she refused to do it anywhere private, and honestly I deserved that. I had rehearsed this whole speech in my truck about shame and stupidity and how sorry I was for not listening. When I actually stood in front of her, all I could get out was, I was wrong. She looked at me for a long second and said, I know. No anger. No victory. Just exhaustion. I asked if there was any chance at all, that after this was over, we might find a way to start over. She didn't answer right away. Then she said the cruelest fair thing anyone has ever said to me. She said, Adam, I needed a partner. You became a witness for the prosecution. I still think about that line at least once a week. By late fall, the legal mess finally landed where it belonged. Colin was charged with fraud, identity-related financial crimes, conspiracy, and evidence tampering. Valerie cut a cooperation deal that probably saved her from prison time but cost her career, her marriage, and pretty much every relationship in her life. My company cleared me internally after independent review confirmed I had been reckless with security but not knowingly involved. That distinction saved my job, though not my reputation entirely. Some people looked at me differently after that. They probably always will. The house got sold. Lauren and I split the proceeds exactly as the court had ordered months earlier, before any of the fraud findings came to light. She could have reopened things. Her attorney apparently suggested it. She didn't. She said she wanted clean lines, not more blood. That sounded like her. A few weeks after charges were filed, she mailed me something in a padded envelope. No note. Inside were two things. My old wedding ring. And the folded note I had refused to read the day I moved out. The paper was creased from being opened and closed too many times by someone else's hands. Mine should have been first. I sat at my kitchen table and read it in one pass, then again slower. It wasn't dramatic. That was the worst part. No big speeches. No manipulative pleas. Just Lauren's handwriting explaining that she had found evidence someone was using my name inside company billing, that she believed Colin was involved, that she hadn't told me yet because she needed enough proof to protect me before confronting anyone. She wrote that she understood how bad it looked. She wrote that she was afraid I would think the worst if I saw pieces of it. She wrote that she loved me, but love was about to require me to trust her in a way I might not know how to do. At the bottom she had added one line. Please don't let your father's sins make you blind to mine not existing. I had to put the paper down after that. I'm not writing this because we got back together in some beautiful cinematic ending. We didn't. That would make a better story, but it wouldn't be true. Lauren moved to Illinois in January for a promotion. We speak sometimes, but only in that careful, scarred way people speak when they've survived each other. There's no hatred left. That's almost harder. Hatred would at least be a bond. What's left is respect, grief, and a permanent outline of the life we were supposed to have. As for me, I stayed in Indiana. I kept the job. Changed every password I own. Stopped drinking for a while. Started therapy, which I used to think was something other people did until I became the kind of man who detonated his own marriage because a stranger slid paper under a door. I learned how to grocery shop without feeling like the cereal aisle was mocking me. I bought a Real bed frame. I call my mother more. I don't trust Charm the way I used to. And Colin? Last I heard, he took a plea. Not because he felt guilty. Men like that rarely do. He took it because for the first time in his life, paperwork finally beat personality. That should feel like revenge. Sometimes it does. But the truth is the punishment that matters most already happened the night I walked out of my house and left the only person in the room who was fighting for me. That's the part one still live with. I left my wife after 6 years of marriage, and for a long time I thought I didn't know how to live anymore because she was gone. The truth was uglier. I didn't know how to live because I finally had to see myself clearly. Not as the betrayed husband. Not as the victim. Just as a man who was loved, warned, and given one last chance to listen. And still chose the lie that hurt in a way he already understood. That's a hard thing to survive. But I am. One ordinary day at a time.